Alright, back again with the Imperial Edit Bay. Got a little bit of a different setup from last week. I think it's going to go a lot better. I wish I could clip that, but we're live. I always do multiple takes on my videos. That's why I'm not advertising these a whole lot, because they are going to be rough. Anyway, I'm calling this series Imperial Edit Bay, live series, hangout live streams where we edit a Star Wars lore video. This week's lore video is how the Rebellion was able to build their fleet, because they didn't have the resources and production capacity of the Empire. This will be Friday's lore video, so if you're watching this, you get a sneak peek, but this is more about the hangout and the process of it. Get the screen share going. It should be taking over. Like I said, these are going to be rough. There we go, and then you get this infinite loop thing to make you dizzy. So we'll just call it Rebel Fleet Building for now. I always change it when I get it up to YouTube. I always have an idea where I'm going with the YouTube packaging. It doesn't always stick to the original plan, but I at least always have an idea. Unfortunately, I just saved the wrong changes to my layout. I like having everything just so when I start, and for some reason Premiere never leaves the media here. So now I have to change that layout again, but we're good. I always make the time small. We got it. I am starting with a rough cut of the video. I write them all myself, fact check them, clean up the tense, the tone. When I record, it always takes twice as long as the video ends up being, sometimes more. And then I do a rough cut to take out all the bad takes and the pauses. There's not usually ums and ahs since I read off a teleprompter. I like starting with the rough cut on these so you don't see here so you don't sit here watching me go over every pause and every beat and everything like that. And there are tools that I use to make that faster, but it's honestly just not all that interesting, where I think this part of the process is a lot more interesting. Hey, got a couple people in. Thanks for joining, guys. Any questions, feel free to ask. I'll remember to check the chat every so often. Is this... Oh, this is sharing the wrong screen. As I said, these are going to be rough until I figure out what I'm doing. There we go. Now you got it. You had no idea what I was talking about with my layouts. Adobe Premiere Pro is a really great text editor here, and this is how I used to do all my cutting in the upper left. I got to remember to get a cursor tracker. I'm going to write that down for next week. And of course, the cat is here. He knows the camera comes on and he comes out. So I really like the text editor here. It gets a little bit confused with Star Wars terms because the words are oftentimes nonsense. But for the most part, it does a good job. My first pass on an edit is always to get all the images in place. I don't do a faceless channel, and this was even... Actually, it's 2 years and 1 day since I launched my first video today, so that's pretty cool. I decided from the beginning I didn't want to do a totally faceless channel because I was worried about AI coming in and making it look like my channel was just an AI thing, or if I just uploaded scripts and had something else edit. I didn't want that to be the case, so I went a little bit of showing my face from the beginning, but I tried to minimize that, as the Star Wars content is the content that people are here for. So I always do a little preamble. Odinson, remember... What do you remember? Like the first videos? If you've been watching that long, I really appreciate it. I always start with a little preamble, then I like to cover what's going to be covered in the video, my this transmission sentence. So in this one, I start with the comparison of talking about the Galactic Empire and how they had unlimited resources and ship factories or commandeered existing ship factories, but the Rebellion couldn't do any of that. So I think it'll be a nice juxtaposition to start with, you know, Star Destroyers and just massive, impressive fleets. What's going on here? Okay, Django. You can't put your butt to the camera. Okay, you gotta sit down. Also, some tips if you guys are into editing. I don't know how far to go on the technical side of it. I learned how to edit. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you had an issue. Okay, yeah. Um, I'm remembering now, Odinson. Like I said, I learned how to edit on a really slow computer. So I like to use keyboard shortcuts. I also learned how to edit on a laptop with no mouse, so the trackpad was annoying to drag around. So I have it so the keyboard controls this topmost layer here, and I can just use the keys to bounce to where it is, and in turn it brings me up to, in the script, where I'm talking about, or where it's showing what part of the video I'm talking about. And at the end of that picture, it goes to the Rebel Alliance, so I can take an image that kind of shows the scrappy upstart of the Rebel Alliance, maybe the meeting from Rogue One. And I also like to, because this starts on the word rebellion, the sentence is the rebellion, so I'll just back it up a little bit, trim that one image, so that as the topic changes, the image changes. And with the smooth transition, that's, I don't know, 16 frames, so it's like 2/3 of a second or something like that, then it jumps through nicely. This transmission will cover. I oftentimes don't put images since it's kind of me giving the lowdown, and lately I've been doing a lot of more, not super obscure, but like I just edited a video on Gallius Rax, who is a canon character who took over for Palpatine after Palpatine died, on getting some of Palpatine's post-death plans out there, like Operation Cinder and in starting the First Order. So he really only exists in novels and comics. There's not a ton of images for him, so things like that, when I do this transmission coverage, I'll generally just show me to space out the sparse images I have. Something unlike Rebel fleets, there's unlimited pictures of ships just from the original trilogy, so that's not as big a concern. I thought I had Death Squadron pictures. I keep a folder of all the pictures I've ever used in videos, except for like very rare one-offs, like I mentioned Lao Tzu in a video. I didn't save that. I have a temporary folder that I just dump that kind of stuff in. But, like I have a whole Death Squadron folder here, so when I need pictures of ships, I can just easily jump into it. But I don't want a picture of Death Squadron when I'm talking about the Alliance, so we'll clip that one, and then I like to use, I don't even know what this tool is called, the scrolling tool, I think, to make the images a little bit more even in how long they're being displayed. Here's my stock footage folder. Just whenever it's a new topic, I make a new folder for it. Koran Horn, and I keep the preview pane pretty big so I can see the images before I drag them in. I know a lot of editors talk about putting everything in your media first or having it all organized ahead of time. Given how many images I use, I feel like in the time it takes me to set up the folder of the images to dump it in, I might as well just track them one by one and put them straight in. And also, going back to learning how to edit on a slow computer, I would only bring the stuff in as I used it so that there was no extra anything. If I bring in a dozen images and I only use 5 of them, that's 7 images that are still in the file size and has to export, at least as far as I know. Maybe they don't count if they're not on the timeline, but I try to get anything out that's not strictly needed. It actually does help if you have to go back and touch things up or re-edit, like a couple I got, not a copyright strike, but a claim. So I had to go in and fix some stuff before I could post it to YouTube, and it makes it easier without having extra stuff in the way. I'm talking about the Alliance having to not be able to produce ships, but somehow figure out how to make a fleet. So pictures of the fleet make a lot of sense. I'm going to talk more specifically about like the B-Wing and the Y-Wing and how they were obtained. It's also, I don't talk about the T-47 in this one because I have a specific T-47 video, but the Snowspeeder was an interesting case study where they just kind of found a ship that was meant for cargo hauling and then outfitted it to serve their purpose and brought it into war. given that I'm just talking about the Rebel fleet and ships, it kind of makes the editing process a little bit easier on this one. This is also a shorter video because I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get it done in the hour, roughly an hour live stream that we'll be doing. I also am optimistic that more people come in, and again, I appreciate you guys watching, so we can talk and do questions and things like that if they come up. I brought up a picture of Leia from Rebels because she lets her ships get stolen, so it looks like she's still playing balls and that, or playing ball, and that the Rebel Alliance is stealing from her. But I do talk about that specifically later, and if you don't know that scene from Rebels specifically, the picture would seem out of place. So that's one I backtrack on, and then I always clear it out of the media area here. Even though I'm probably going to bring that one back in later, I don't want to remember to go back to it. And what I do, let me find one and I'll show you. I'm talking about stealing ships, but I can't think of an example beyond that one in Rebels or ones that I specifically talk about, so I gotta figure something out. I'm just bringing a cool headhunter picture. Oh, there, I'll back that up. So when I'm doing, like, say, a video on Darth Vader and just bringing in image after image after image of Darth Vader from my one Darth Vader folder, if I drag it to the timeline, it instantly appears here if I haven't already used it. So then if I go to drag it in again further down the line where I can't see what I had just done, if it doesn't populate here, I know I already used it, and I exit out. There are a few times where I've used an image multiple times, and I try not to, but sometimes it's pertinent, or sometimes it's like what I was talking about, where there's just not that many images of a particular topic. Something else that I have to do from time to time is actually open up my script. I guess there's no problem with this. Everything's in Google Docs, so I can get it from my phone or my laptop or my editing computer. Because the spelling of some things. What are we talking about? Looking at canon. Shantipole. S-H-A-N-T-I-P-O-L-E, and Premiere Pro puts it as C-H-A-N-D-E-R-P-A-U-L. So I needed the real spelling so that I could get images of that pulled up, because I have not made a video on that. That's a simple process. Generally, it's Google image search. There are websites, like Star Wars screenshots, that somebody literally went in and screenshot every frame of everything Star Wars. So if you're looking for something ultra specific, it's an awesome resource, but last I looked at it, it wasn't searchable, so that makes it really difficult to find exactly what you're looking for unless you pinpoint it down in the movie where you know where it is. So here I'm just... Shantipole's a new thing I haven't talked about. I have a planets folder, and then Shantipole will be a subfolder inside. So if ever I reference it again, I know I have it. I also try not to use naming conventions where it's like Shantipole-Spires, Shantipole-Atmosphere, Shantipole-Space, because it's in the Shantipole folder already. So I give it more descriptive names like From Space for a picture of the planet from space. And while I'm here, because it has everything else I'm talking about, here's a picture of the B-Wing. So again, a ship subfolder, B-Wing, or ship folder, B-Wing subfolder, and I could just save it as prototype S-foils, since the S-foils are out. Here's the prototype of it landed, and it looks like concept art, which is awesome. So now that I have a few images there, just got to find those folders again. And here we go. Bring this one in first. I also changed my settings so that each image is in for default to 8 seconds. I'll make them a little bit longer or shorter. I try not to go any image over 10 seconds, and I was trying to bring more video clips in because it's just more visually interesting and it'll spark that familiarity if you've seen the project it's pulled from. But it's just not worth with the copyrights. Some people can do entire videos on clips, and I put in, an 8-second clip from the 2D Clone Wars micro series, and got flagged that they would demonetize the video or take the monetization, which I thought was a little bit extreme. Since, as far as YouTube's fair usage rights goes, if I am using it and referring to it and talking about it and altering it, but not in like a sneaky way of like using AI or something to make it look like something it's not, but commentating on it, essentially, it's supposed to be in the fair use agreement, but it comes down to the IP holder and you getting into an argument and trying to go through YouTube, and it's not worth the time, the energy, or the bad blood with whatever parent company, so I just use a still image at this point. Here I'm mentioning Hera Syndulla, who's I like her as a character a lot. I like how Rebels really went into the found family aspect of Star Wars, with her being kind of the mom, but also like a capable pilot and kind of a badass in her own right. And here's actually an image from Squadrons, which Squadrons is a great resource if you're doing ship videos. You cockpit shots and cool atmospheric battle shots and everything like that. It was also a really good game, never got enough credit. And from her it jumps to Bail Organa. She's primarily, well, I guess not primarily an animated character anymore with the Ahsoka series. The Bail Organa I always think of is the Jimmy Smits version. Benjamin Bratt actually did a pretty decent job. I did think the recasting was jarring, and I get it, they tried. I'd rather a recast than a deep fake, especially for someone who they could easily be working with. But he was important in the Andor story, so I'm going on a tangent, but I'm going with the Jimmy Smits version because that's the most familiar version to me, and that's how he was originally portrayed. Here's another example of the Premiere Pro. Not really know what I'm saying. I say turning our attention to Reclam in Imperial Salvage Yard. It translated as turning our attention to reclamation in Imperial Salvage. So it's quite a bit different. I also have a Places folder. It's not letting me search. Because Reclam is not the planet. I believe the planet was Yavin, something like that. So Reclam folder, and then we'll do Station Underside. This is actually also from Star Wars Rebels, because the show is the early days of the Rebellion. They do a bit of stealing. Never totally fell in love with the art style from Rebels, but I really like the show and the lore. So there's Reclam.
Planet Yarma in the outer.
Yarma, okay. Try to find more pictures of that before we dump the Y-Wings in, because we talk about the Y-Wings specifically. But the Google image search is mostly just showing me, like, car salvage from our world. Here's nice concept art of it. Love concept art. Especially with the original trilogy, like doing the Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina videos. That was a lot of fun, because I was finding a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that I had never seen before. Now we can get the lined up Y-wings. Odinson says same. Are you saying same on the video issue? Or the the Rebels art issue? Even an artist friend of mine agreed with the Rebels thing, and he has very interesting views on art because he's so dialed into that world where a lot of times it kind of like blows my mind talking about things where I feel like I have like a caveman approach to it. But he had a good observation on how they tried to do this like almost like cel-shaded bright color look, but it never quite lands with them trying to do like a halfway realistic CG look. I mean, he would explain it better, but it was just a new way to think about it on like, I know when I watch it, it doesn't click, and I could never quite come out with like, why is this not clicking? And that was exactly it. Now we'll cut back to me. Talking about the two opposing factions where the Empire sees everything as disposable and the Rebel Alliance needs to hold everything together with hopes and dreams. Now I'm talking about the Y-Wing's involvement as a whole, so we can go into the ships in the Y-Wing folder and get some cool stuff. It's a really cool render, probably from Squadrons. The Y-Wings going up against the Death Star. So I'm going to find Y-Wings and X-Wings together. Every now and then I'm tempted to go into like Google Nano Banana AI image generator is fantastic. And uploading pictures of like a Y-Wing and an X-Wing and, you know, say have these ships flying together, and it would probably do a seamless job, but I'm just wary on jumping into AI with things where people watching the video would see that the image is a compilation or is mashed together, probably using AI, unless I take the time to cut it out with Photoshop, which when you're editing a video, the image is on screen for 6 to 8 seconds. I just couldn't possibly do that for every image. That one thing being AI could throw my whole video or even channel into doubt. So at this stage, I know AI is here to stay, and it's only getting better. I mean, even my day job now, I am using AI, and I'm a web developer, so that's a little bit scary that I'm basically using the thing that's going to replace me one day. I know it's inevitable. I'm just wary on wading into the waters. I appreciate that, Odin-san. I thought this would be a fun little experiment thing to do. I wasn't really sure what to do as far as a live stream goes by myself, talking to camera. A lot of people do news coverage, and really some of the news I don't find all that interesting because it's always announcements and 3/4 of them don't come true. So I thought this would be a unique, cool thing we can do, and if people decide they've had enough, we can pivot to something else, but I'm having fun with it, and it's getting work done. I like to be productive, so that's, you know, can't complain about that. And since you have or had a channel too, if you have any specific questions, just let me know. I'm not going to claim I'm the best editor ever, but I've put in some time and some work and taken some classes, and I mean, for all I know, you know a million times more than me about editing, but, you know, the offer's there. I like these cutout books, the cross-section books. It's a cool picture of the A-Wing. Hopefully this come through clear enough for you guys. I know the screen sharing lowers the resolution a bit. But this new camera's holding out. It was like $50. It's not bad. My DSLR that I was using with a capture card last week, and I use it for the Review Harvest podcast kind of format shows. I don't know if either of you guys watched that on my channel. That one crapped out on me last week for this live stream. It's been working fine for everything else, so I don't know why. The capture card was really, really hot, so I figured get a dedicated web camera. Then not only do I have to not carry my lights and camera up and down 2 flights of stairs every day, but this one can just sit here on top of my monitor, and it also gets a much better view of my new cabinets full of Star Wars collectibles. So it's a little bit more on theme than just shooting the wall behind me with my personal calendar and some old Marvel statues from when I loved the Marvel Cinematic Universe that has fallen off a cliff. When I have just a couple images together in this like weird gap of space here where it's about 2 seconds, I like to move one image over and kind of split the difference. The only time I won't do that is if the beginning of this image is mentioning, like Princess Leia by name. I don't want it to stay on a picture of a Star Destroyer for an extra second and a half before getting to her. It would feel like the edit is off. I appreciate that, Odinson. Editing is actually one of my favorite parts. I mean, I like doing the research because I was always reading Star Wars lore and talking to my friends about Star Wars and bugging my wife with new things I learned about Star Wars, and she was nice enough to be like, oh, that's cool, that's interesting, but I know it's not something she's super into, so this is like a great outlet for that. And I always liked writing and doing the research, but the editing is where I have the fun. I was even applying for editing jobs for a while. Actually might have one starting soon, so that's cool, but that's a whole other thing. But I have a lot of fun with this. I feel like I learned how to do it for me. I don't know if someone hired me for their channel and they wanted me to edit it in their style. I mean, unless I watched a bunch of their videos, I'm sure I could figure it out, but I can really zip through this for me. It used to take me about 4 hours per video on the edit. And now between using Gling as a tool to get the rough cut done and then jumping into this, if I'm not talking and narrating, I was doing them in about 2 hours last week, which was good. I mean, even last week in the live stream, from the rough cut to the end time, I think it was about an 8-minute video. It was about an hour 15, and we're only about half an hour in, and once the images are placed, it goes really fast. It's probably more interesting at that point, because right now I'm just dragging images onto a timeline. But once we get to the other part, it kind of shows how the whole thing goes from just a slideshow to I feel like it's more dynamic and comes together and has interesting elements. I'm kind of talking about starfighters at large here, so instead of just cutting back to me again, I'm going to try to get some like group shots from squadrons. Like this one I love. I can't really see it. Here, like pop it up. It's all the playable ships from Star Wars Squadrons, but it's cool to have all the core alphabet, well, I guess not the B-Wing, but a lot of the core alphabet named ships in one image. Now we're going into the Mon Calamari people. I also have a species folder. Mon Calamari are in there. I thought this image was funny. I'll scale it up again. I don't know where it came from. I added the gradient background just so it has a background, but it's just ridiculous. I blanked on the name of the main Mon Calamari battlecruiser. It is Home 1. Very cool looking ship. I'm putting in Home 1 because here I do talk about the profundity, so we'll cut this one off. I'm pretty sure I have a profundity folder. Yes, I do. I couldn't remember because I did a video on Admiral Raddus, and that was his capital ship, so I thought maybe he was part of that. Profundity. This was the main capital ship over Scarif. The ship started its life as a tower in a city, but when the Empire took control, they flew it out of there and converted it for war. So here, the city image is less interesting than the ship destroying a Star Destroyer, so we'll split the difference and get them about the same, just shy of 6 seconds each. Get a little bit on the U-Wing, which was a really cool addition for Rogue One, and I thought they did a good job of introducing it, but not making it feel ridiculous that you don't see it again into the original trilogy, since Rogue One runs right into it. Just trying to find a cool image of it. There's one from Entertainment Weekly that's pretty sweet. More cross sections. So now I'm talking about Leia delivering the Corellian corvettes in Rebels. I don't think I have any screen grabs of that exactly. I'm trying to go through my folders and find out before I make more. There's a lot of good images from that episode, but I'm not finding exactly what I need in her with the Corellian corvettes in the background. It's a hollow of Hammerhead corvettes, but that's not really what we're talking about. I also try to pick exact screen grabs or artwork that's Star Wars official. There's some cool stuff on like DeviantArt and fan sites and stuff, but I try not to take somebody else's work. I mean, technically, they're not the IP holder either, but just, you know, out of respect. There has been times, I remember early on I did a video on Mara Jade, and I kept coming across these really great cosplayer pictures. Ray Kenix is her name on Instagram, and I actually reached out to her, and she was cool with me using the pictures as long as I gave her credit, so that was a huge help. And I also kind of like that. That was something I wanted to do with the channel from the beginning, is this kind of like creators helping creators kind of world. Now here it's me just kind of talking about the subject as a whole, and it says I have a filler word here, so I gotta listen to it.
Hope to outbuild the Empire.
No, the word was out, not I always try to remove the filler words. I don't do it from the podcast format. I used to, but it didn't feel like a natural conversation with like quick jittery cuts, and a lot of times there are pauses where we're trying to come up with the exact right words. You could even tell I'm doing it here. I'm not going off a script, so I will fumble over it. Especially with the Invisalign, and I pronounce everything wrong. So I'm saying that the rebellion could not outbuild the Empire, so going toe-to-toe with them and trying would be foolish and wasteful. So instead, the rebels create multiple avenues to build, obtain, and acquire ships. So again, I think I can just find cool images of rebel ships and get it in there. You know, we didn't talk about X-Wings a lot, so let's do that. There's actually an X-Wing and a Corvette from Galaxy's Edge. It's a pretty cool ride. Rise of the Resistance. Say what you want about the sequel trilogy. I'm sure most things you have to say are valid. But I have a great time at Galaxy's Edge. Now I'm talking about a Rebel fleet, and the best example of that, as far as I'm concerned, is the Battle of Endor. And I think I already used this image. It came in as a new image, but I'm pretty sure I used it up front. Oh, I didn't. Awesome. If the image has a different name or the same name but a different path, then it will come up as a new image. That's the catch to that. And then I always end it with check out this transmission next for more, and I usually make that on me a lot of times with a zoom out or something like that. Alright, so all the images are in place. That's kind of the probably boring to watch part. I don't find it boring because that's kind of like, it gives me an extra chance to put context and show you what I'm talking about. And I try to do things in the same order. Sometimes I don't. Like I edited one earlier that I did some of the things backwards, but then at the end of it I had to go over it all in my mind to make sure I didn't skip any steps. So the next thing that I always do is get the shots that are going to be me locked down. I put an adjustment layer above everything so I don't change my original file. Just something I learned to do. I used to change the original file before I took some proper lessons, and I don't think there's been a case where it's been a massive difference, but there has been times where I cut out things that I didn't necessarily want to cut out, and restoring it is possible, but a little bit of a pain if you don't catch it right away. I pull the text part of it off to the side. I have to put it on the other monitor so you can't see it, but you probably can't read the text with the degraded resolution on screen sharing anyway. Just so I can see what part I'm talking about as I'm cutting it. Like if I switch topics, I want to make a zoom or a zoom out. The other thing I do, going back to learning how to edit on a very slow laptop, is everywhere where the footage of me is not going to be seen, I just get rid of it. It's that much less for it to have to render and put out, because if it's on the timeline, it's going to get rendered into the final project, even if something's covering it up. So once these images are all full screen, like right now you can see the black background, but we're not done with the images yet. Oh, I screwed that up. In talking, I screwed it up. I do cut it all out, but before that, the adjustment layer, I put the transform on it so I can get everything zoomed in. The grid here is the rule of thirds. It's 3 horizontal, 3 vertical lines. So when you're editing or doing something, even like art, like a thumbnail or something like that, the rule of thirds is you want to be on any of these lines. Like, here's technically okay if the left has text or something, same thing with the right. I usually do image on the right, text on the left if I have to, because people read left to right. But as far as me narrating as the talking head, I always go to the center. And then the red one is more variable for the eye line. Like if I do one where I'm sitting down, or if I'm a little too close to the camera in a different environment, that might be different. But you do that so when you're at, well, here, let me do a cut so you can see. So I'll jump this one in by a lot just to make it a very stark example. I still line up the cross-section of this at the bridge of my nose and put the red line over the eyes so that when it jumps in, it doesn't throw you off. But the other reason why I do one continuous layer over it, I could never quite get the color balancing where I liked it and having it be super consistent per video. So I found a preset, a LUT, and I meant to look up what LUT stands for, but it's basically presetting on the lighting and tone of it. I found a vintage 70s film one that makes things a little bit extreme, but also kind of gives it this cool warm tone. So I throw that on, and that's all I do for color correction on my personal videos. I've done like slideshows and like real estate walkthroughs and stuff, and I don't do something like that, then I do adjust it, and sometimes I'll even adjust it image by image. but you do want to have kind of a consistent look over it. I forget the name for it, but like I also do a comic book with a friend and I do the coloring, and on that we always put one like unifying layer to kind of soften everything. Like if it's about high school kids, if they're in the school, it's kind of like a warm yellow layer. If they're in one of the kids' basements, their main hangout, it's a more orangey kind of thing. But then if they're outside at night, I do like a purple haze over it, and it really does unify it in your eye instead of everything being a drastically different tone. So it's the same thought here. And instead of listening to the whole video again, because that would just take forever, I like to look for big breaks in the audio file. Like I have a giant pause here, which is generally an indication that I'm putting emphasis or switching topics. So when I do that, then I'll add a new adjustment layer, and I color code everything. This is probably a step I could skip, but that's really helpful if I do have to go back and re-edit something. Just visually, I know pink is images. This Caribbean color is my adjustment layer. The blue is the default color of my original file that I bring in. And then I make all of my zooming adjustment layers this teal. If I have a layer like a logo or something that I'm not going to change, I always make it an orange. The color is arbitrary, but it's just color coding everything is like a shortcut for your eye, so you can just jump to it. This is a huge time-saving thing. If anyone watching this is an editor or plans to be or wants to edit your own stuff, presets. I used to manually keyframe every last thing and then do the eases and move the handles. And I found an editor that I really love online, Finzar. I guess I'll throw it to him. It's not an affiliate or anything like that, I wish. But he's an awesome editor, super entertaining guy. I got to the point where I would just watch his videos for the entertainment aspect, even though they are most of the time about teaching editing. He has a whole preset pack for Premiere Pro, and then he made it for DaVinci, which just saves me a ton of time. You have to do a little bit of reinvesting into your own channel. So instead of me putting a keyframe, using the arrow key to move it out a bunch, putting another keyframe, and then having to adjust these handles to get the different look to it, I just use his, and then as you can see, it's a nice simple slide in. It's a very subtle thing, but I find this is more pleasant than start cuts all the time. I generally do cuts for zoom outs, but I actually don't zoom out a lot unless there's a lot of talking head, which does happen from time to time if there's not so many images or the content doesn't really fit that. If it's like me talking about Star Wars misconceptions or something, it's more just me talking not off the top of my head, but me talking without the images backing me up. So I kind of have to use more ins and outs since to add the visual interest to it. So here I'm talking about the difference between Rebel and Imperial. So I can zoom in to make my point and then have it zoom back out. I'll do really big push-ins if it's like a major point that needs to be made or for like dramatic effect, but generally I try to keep them all, probably under like 50%, just so it's like a nice little bit of emphasis put on it, not going crazy. You don't need to see my pores. And if it's a quick inner thing like this, this is probably, let me check, that's 6 seconds. So I'm not going to put a zoom on a 6-second little stretch. I don't want people to go dizzy because we're going to have the image fades to this image, and then I have a transition to get to me talking. If there was also a zoom back to a transition, that's like 7 different things going on inside of 10 seconds. So that, to me, that's far too many. This is more of like, I don't want to say documentary, that makes it sound lofty, but it's an informational. I like to go for a documentary tone and talk about it as if it's real. But either way, I find that's too many cuts inside of a small time. And here's an example where for a little bit of effect, I'm not going to use a transition because it's just emphasis on one word. So I'll jump it in a lot. And usually I watch these back, and if it just doesn't sit right with me, I abandon it and just let my delivery, which admittedly I am no actor, it's not the best delivery, speak for itself.
But it's equally important. Paperwork. This legal issue.
Okay, so it didn't cut back soon enough, so I gotta get in there and... It should just be the word paperwork. But since I didn't change the original file, I just did the adjustment layer, it's easy to drag it around.
This legal-ish way of obtaining ships for the rebel...
Alright, I'm good with it. Probably didn't need the second pause after this, because then it's pause, paperwork, pause, this, pause. It's... Now I can go back to my smooth zooms. While I do have tons and tons and tons of zooms, I usually stick in this normal zoom, as you categorize it, at 40 frames for it to happen. The video is 30 frames per second, so it's just a bit over a second. Gives your mind time to adjust. And I've also been... I used to do this a lot when I manually did the keyframes, and I don't do it so much with the presets. I would do it a lot with really long takes of me talking and just slowly rotate the camera. It's a little bit of like a Dutch tilt. But I've been doing it more in the last couple weeks just because it just adds another... There's only so many times you can go in and out, and a lot of my stuff you can just listen to. I'm actually working on pulling all the audio to make it a proper podcast also. But I like this kind of like side thing. I don't love that you can go off up here on the top left corner. You know, it's the end of the video file. But I also don't want to zoom in too much more than that and mess up the eye line. I guess we can experiment with how far in do I have to go. 185, but then if I move it down, yeah, I'm just gonna... We're just gonna have a little bit of black there. I think it'll be fine. I don't think it takes away from the content at all. And then for the check out this transmission, I like to put a bit of a zoom. A big thing in YouTube is you kind of don't want people to know that the video is about to wrap up. I used to do a lot lengthier, in conclusion, like an essay where your last paragraph kind of sums up your main points and puts a button on it. I try not to do that so much because I just want to jump to the check this transmission next with the video showing up, because that gets someone to watch the next video. And if you want to help a YouTuber out, the best thing you can do is watch a video, watch a video, watch a video, watch a video, all of theirs, because YouTube has that same social media casino model where they want to keep you on the platform. So if a creator is... If you're showing YouTube you like a creator by watching multiple in a row, especially by clicking on the end screen, those videos are going to get promoted a lot better. I'm not even asking you to do that for me specifically. I mean, if you do, awesome, thank you. But it's just kind of like general YouTube. That's how YouTube works. So here's me manually doing the keyframes, because I don't have good luck with the presets on the zooming out. So I set the keyframe for the position and the scale at the beginning, and then you set the end point, and then you want to do ease in and ease out. But I always did these backwards because in is on top and out's on the bottom. What you want to do is ease out of the beginning and then ease into the end, and that will give you... Get the handles up. That will give you this nice curve instead of it being like a linear... So, but in the middle of this, which is hard to tell because it's like only half a second apart, but it gets a lot smoother where here it's at its fastest point and then it slows back down again. You can see the velocity here as it starts, you know, it's at negative 85, 127, 140, 147, 48, and then back down to 70 and levels off. And if you're watching this back, just drag your keyframes further away to be longer, closer together to be shorter. So that's all the video taken care of. I always add a voiceover filter. The presets all got moved. Voiceover filter just to smooth things out, but the Gling also does a nice job at enhancing it, and the lapel mics are pretty solid to begin with, but that's all I do for the audio until the very end, where I balance it with the music bed that I put under it. So then I try to find a video or a image that's the wrong aspect ratio, like this one is taller than it is wide. I always do scale to frame size. When I make shorts or something, you can do fill frame, because the short is just going to give you the skyscraper mode anyway. I add the fade transitions between and then copy the whole layer exactly below it. Then I nest it so this entire layer is one object, basically. 300% usually fills it, where it fills the entire frame. And then I put a graphic blur on the background, and I add a drop shadow to the original images to give it a little bit of separation. This one's black on black, so it's kind of hard to see. You can kind of see it here. The drop shadow makes it look a lot cleaner. Then I go back to the zooms, and I use this is where I do use a linear zoom, so you don't have that little like kind of bell graph that I was showing you. I found slow works the best. Medium was too fast, and slowest was hard to see the movement. And what I like about the preset is the beginning is anchored to the start, and the end is actually anchored to the end, so no matter how long the image is, they all move at the same pace. You just get further in if the image is longer. So nice clean zooms across everything. And even though I intentionally put the fade in and fades out, I never start with a fade in, because I just, when you do the rollover thing on YouTube, I want the image to be there. I don't want it to be a black screen, because that will stop people from clicking, which that's been my biggest YouTube issue, is my click-through rate, as it's called. It's how many times is your video presented to somebody and they click on it or don't. I'm in the normal range, but it's lower than I'd like. So I use the cross dissolve, even though it's very basic, in between images. And then I actually do like a cooler transition going from different types of video. So like, or not video, but images. So going from the video of me into an actual like lore image, I like to do a transition, and in the beginning I was doing transitions every time, but between the transition and the like whipping sound effects to get that little whoosh sound, it got to be a lot. I thought it was really cool, but it's because I just learned how to do it. But objectively, it got to be a bit much. I usually just do slides. I just do slide up in this case.
Or to lose. This transmission will come.
Oh, something went wrong. Did I not do the... There's a main preset that he has that you put on these two adjustment layers. They're both they're both 8 frames. Then the one above it is 16 frames. The one above it defines how it actually looks. So you get the cross dissolve from image to image, and then you get the actual slide there, and it's nice and smooth. I also used to do, like if I did slide up for it going back to video, then going back to image, I would do a slide down, or like a left to right, or top left to top right, and I found it just got to be distracting, having too many different things. So I'll change it up video to video. You know, the one I did earlier, I think I did swipe left. The one I did before that, if I remember right, it was like slide top right, but, you know, just say it was for the example. Doesn't really matter. I found that was a lot less distracting. So then I take the cross dissolve off, so it's not fading out and doing the transition and do this, because I don't want you just staring at black, even if it is for, you know, half a second. So it's a little bit of extra work adding and then taking away, but I like having the cross dissolve on the lower image. If I hide this all together, you just see the background. Oh, you just see the blurred out background, and I also don't have the background doing the zoom. I used to have the background doing the zoom, but I felt it worked better. Of course, these are all widescreen images. I'll go back to the beginning where I know it's... I feel like it works better separating it from the background, having just the top layer move. So just get all the transitions where it goes back and forth, and the only one I do different is going to my end screen. And I always do a rotation on that. I don't know why. I started it probably like a year ago. And even though I don't want to signify the end, it just felt right to do something a little bit different. So if someone watches that point and doesn't watch my end screen, I'm not hurt. You got all the information, so that's great. So I'll do another one here. And instead of rebuilding this thing with the 3 layers, you could just remove all the attributes and then just slap new rotation attributes on. And then I actually have to put the end screen so you can see how it works. The end screen is 1080p, so I have to scale it up. No problem. And then it does a nice rotation into the end screen. Got the social media popping up, and it's a wormhole in space. So along with the end screen, I also like to put in my little cartoon avatar guy that my buddy drew for me. It's actually the guy who I do the comic with, so you can see his art style there. I like to go around the 3-minute mark. This video is only 6.5 minutes, so it's kind of tight.
It is ultimately destroyed. This also gives us a good example of the thought of resources between.
I try to do it after I've made a point and not in the middle of a point, because while I do want people to subscribe and everything, I think the content of the video comes first, and I don't want to interrupt myself in the middle of a thought or even a sentence to ask you to do something, because if I annoy you, why would you do something that helps me out? Plus it just, kills the flow of it. It's like watching a streaming show and then you get hit with a commercial even though you're used to an ad-free Netflix. A lot of times I don't do transitions into it, but because we're going from images to video over here, bridging my little cartoon guy, I'm going to leave it. Probably doesn't hurt or help anything. And I also made this recruitment poster. I'm sure you've seen if you watch my videos. Again, my buddy drew this. I just put the poster part around it. He drew the guy with a long finger, which I love how he did the exaggerated finger. It's like a Ren and Stimpy thing. I put this at the end. I appreciate anyone who is a channel member, but I understand it doesn't work for everybody. So I like to throw it in, but I don't even have a sound effect for it, because again, I don't want it to take away from the content. Once I get it set up, I generally do super smooth in. And this one I do use the slide out, because these are made for PNGs. So I did a slide in as up, slide out as down. I'll do left, right. I'll do down to up. It doesn't really matter. I could probably even make that its own video clip. So I just throw one thing and I don't have to rebuild it every time. But it took me all of 15 seconds even while talking over it. So it doesn't really worry me. It's not going to kill me time-wise. Then the last thing I add as decoration is I throw my logo in there. I think my logo is pretty cool. Something I gave myself a little bit of a starting budget before I launched my first video, and this was one thing that I found, an After Effects template that I could modify. Did the logo myself, put it into the template, and actually, if I switch my camera, you can see here, I 3D printed a holo projector and added all the LEDs and stuff, and that is actually projecting my logo. It is smooth in person. The camera frame rate puts those lines in it, but I thought that was pretty cool. So it's the exact same logo file, I just scaled it down to fit on the holo projector. And the logo, I bring the glitching sound way down 20 decibels, because people have complained. I also like to throw a shadow onto it, even though it makes no sense that a projected hologram would have a shadow. It's made of light, it shouldn't. But it does separate it from the background a little bit more, especially on lighter color backgrounds. Especially given that this is a 6-minute video. If it was like a 25-minute video, maybe I'd put it a third time. I like to put it kind of at the beginning, so if new people stumble into my channel, my logo's there. It's kind of a reminder of who I am. And then I also like to put it midway between... Here's me asking for the subscriber, the yellow here, and then obviously my end. So I like to put it midway through, because I don't want things too close together. I don't want it to be asking for a sub, and then the logo pops up, and then the channel membership recruitment poster pops up, and then we get to the end. It's too many things, so now this way it's spread out over a little over 3.5 minutes instead. And I believe that's it. We just need the whip sound effect. Watching an Ed Lawrence video, that's his channel name now, Ed Lawrence. It was, I think it was Film Booth and then Creator Booth. I think that was the order it went. A couple businesses he had, kind of in the same vein. But that's where I tried to learn a lot of the how to present to camera stuff and some editing stuff. And then he even did a crossover video with that guy Finzar I was talking about on editing. And they talk about how you basically need like 3 whip transition sounds. So what I do, I used to have 3, and I would try to change them up, but then I didn't want it to be too much of a pattern where it was, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or 3, 2, 1, or 1, 3, 2, whatever. So I use 1, and I lower the sound level by 15, so it's subtle behind me, it's not interrupting me talking. And then I hit this maintain audio pitch, and leave, well, sometimes I change the speed for the first one, but the maintain audio pitch. And then what I like to do is use the arrow keys to get to the next time I need it. And then I can just change the duration, like here's 160. So if I put them next to each other and I mute my talking track, you'll hear that they sound like 2 completely different whips for no extra work. It's not a night and day difference, but it's different enough that when you hear this 6 or 7 times in the same file, they don't sound alike. So I more or less randomly assign them numbers. Oh, my editing computer is good enough, but not great, so sometimes when I hit my asking for subs thing, it locks up the display, so I just kind of have to give it a minute. Yeah, it's not happy right now. This is also the 4th video I've edited today, so it's taken a beating. Or 4th I've edited since resetting, I should say, not today. I wish I had that kind of time. There's no uniformity to this. Just change up the number and try not to have it too close. I try not to do 140 then 150 next to each other. The only one I do the same every time is I go down to 85% speed for this last one, just because the rotation is a bit of a longer animation. It's very minor difference. It's more just something I do out of habit. So now the last step is adding music. And this also got a lot easier with Premiere Pro. YouTube even has a music thing. I forget what they call it. But what you have to be careful with using music is copyright and licensing agreements. Even if you've paid for the right to use it, if they change that, or if you have it on a subscription, you stop paying for that subscription, with some of them, you have to read the terms of service. You're not technically allowed to use that music anymore. There's a site called Creator Mix. It's made by 2 brothers who are YouTube growth experts, Nick and Dee Nimmin. I watch their stuff every week. I was a channel member for a while. I will be again. They're great guys, a lot of good information, but Creator Mix has tons of music, all sorts of different vibes, but all made for this kind of thing. And they have a license that they encourage you to download that basically says you can use this on any video for any purpose in perpetuity. They just ask that you link to them in the description of every single video I've done. Even ones that I don't put music in, there's a Creator Mix link, because I think that's super cool of them to do. I try not to go... I don't know how well it's coming through. That's a bit heavy, though. I try to do, like, this lo-fi and chill stuff more. Hopefully that was coming through okay. Sometimes, like, when I do, like, an unboxing or, like, a collector central thing, I like to go a little bit more 80s synth vibe just for fun. And I try to get something a little bit more ominous for, like, Imperial characters, like the Gallius Rax one that I edited was the last one I edited. I always start at minus 30 dB. It seems to work the best for being able to hear it but not covering up the music, or not covering up the voice.
And they did it as quickly as possible. Sometimes,
and then something else I do, the overall mix, I try to keep between, 6 and 4 decibels, so -9 and -12. I'm not even sure what this column is.
Stealing ships, repairing abandoned vessels, etc.
So this is the overall mix, and it's staying right in that range. I just find that's the best for listening to it on YouTube, where you get someone else's video, maybe a song, a commercial, into my video, it goes out to a commercial, back into my video. I don't want someone's ears getting blown out on their headphones or not being able to hear what's going on, and I found that's kind of the sweet spot. And this is a very cool thing that Premiere Pro has been doing for a while now. You can remix music, so go to Remix, enable Remix, and it analyzes the whole clip, doesn't usually take too long, and then you can put in your target duration of the song. Like the original song, 2 minutes and 16 seconds. My video is 6 minutes, 37 seconds. Put it in, it gets it close, plus or minus 5 seconds. Like I put in 6:37:09, it got me to 6:38:22. So what I do is I just snip the end and then add a nice fade on my end screen without it going into where the content is. But what that does is it finds the repeats and the patterns, and it stretches it out to whatever time you need. I think I've gone up to like 20 minutes on one track, and it works.
Between the A-Wing and the TIE Fighter in their speed and weapon.
And also if I jump around, you'll tell
Liberating the galaxy. We'll use
it's not the exact same thing. I mean, it's exactly from the song, but it's not just like a 4-second loop of the middle of the song over and over and over. It actually remixes the middle part pretty well. Especially for just background music. I mean, if you took like a rock song, especially something with lyrics, and did it, I don't know how good it would work. But for my purposes, that's a no-brainer, because I only need one track per song. And that is me editing a Star Wars video. Then I just export it with my preset YouTube settings. I always use Media Encoder, especially when I'm doing a lot, like on days where I edit our podcast format. I have the long format, I have the clip version, and I usually do it with another video, or I'll do shorts for my my friend's podcast channel, So Wizard Podcast. So I can get like 6-7 things in this queue, and then I just set it and walk away, go do something else while the computer works. I have all the videos I've ever done, and that's where I'm going to be pulling the audio from for the podcast format. I'm just trying to find a way to automate it, because to go through, it's got to be close to 400 videos now. I've been doing at least 3 a week for 2 years without missing, and some weeks have been 4. When I had a sponsor, it got up to 5. So it's a lot to go through manually. This video itself, 6 minutes, 37 seconds, is kind of short. I usually aim for like 8 to 10, 8 to 12 minutes. But I also firmly believe that a video should only be as long as the video needs to be. So this one had 6.5 minutes of content. There was no benefit to me padding it. I could have came up with more examples of them stealing ships, but I don't want it to overstay its welcome. There's some videos that end up, like I did a Lego and Star Wars that's actually coming out today as of this live stream. That one's about 20 minutes, because there was probably 20 minutes, 25 minutes of content, and I pared it down. So I like to let the videos be what they are, every now and then do an outlier on the high side, and on the low side is fine by me if that's all it takes to cover. YouTube does have rules, especially for a smaller person like me trying to build and get into it. But I think they all need some flexibility. Like if I took this 6.5 minute video and I padded it out to 10 minutes just so I could run mid-roll ads, as you're watching it, when you get to like the 6-7 minute mark, you'll probably feel like, oh, okay, I see what he's doing. He's padding it out. And I also don't like the mixed topics. I could have talked about a 2-minute topic in this to get it a little bit longer, or went into some specifics on one of the ships, but that, to me, is mixing 2 different ideas. And I find the best thing that works, and what I'm told works the best on YouTube, is one idea, one point, get it done, and then do the next video. So thanks everyone who watched this live, or anyone who's watching this on the repeat. Once again, let me know in the comments if this is something you'd like to see continue, or if we should pivot to something else for the Mondays. Got some cool feedback from people watching live that they are liking this, so awesome, thank you. And thanks for hanging out. I will see you in the next one.